I don't know about y'all, but Pluto doesn't even regress into Capricorn until next week. And I'm already personally feeling a huge increase in like just pressure from that energy. And I'm feeling a lot more blocked. So I felt compelled to come on here and talk about it in the hopes that maybe it'll help folks that are listening to this. And I think also help me as I talk through it. Because I understand intellectually that Pluto's going to be coming out of Capricorn in, I think it's November 19th. So this is the last instance, although it's kind of, I think it's going to feel like kind of a longish period of time, nearly 3 months, where we're going to be confronted with those energies. And after that, we're going to be free of those energies, for the rest of this lifetime. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I also wanted to share a bit about what I've come to see through past life regressions and energy work and stuff regarding how this relates to the fall of Atlantis. So here we go. If we don't know one another, I'm Rachel. And the big purpose of this channel is to talk about essentially the rebalancing of masculine and feminine energies on Earth, because unhealthy masculine has been overvalued for millennia and healthy feminine has been denigrated. And we all have felt the negative impacts of that. And that like propulsive energy that moved us toward, this place we're in now where there's too much unhealthy masculine energy dominating daily life. I know that served a purpose, and that relates to the fall of Atlantis as well, I think, in a direct way. But we've reached this stage in humanity's evolution that I think is really going to kick off after Pluto moves into Aquarius, like for good being the next whatever 20-ish years. In November, we're at this stage now where that old sort of linear thrust of quote unquote progress and capitalism is really intertwined with that. It can't get us any further. It's not working anymore. And I know a lot of us feel it, especially people with a lot of feminine energy, whatever your gender. But I also want to fully acknowledge, while being inclusive, that a lot of the people who have a lot of feminine energy are women. And I want to see more of us, I guess, waking up to that and harnessing it. And again, to be clear, people of all genders have both masculine and feminine energies. And I would say that virtually every human I've ever met slash like known about has unhealthy masculine energy in them, because like we're swimming in it. We're the fish and it's the water. And it's conditioned so much of our experience. And I've become strongly convinced that the biggest way it does that is through the capitalistic system, because it's all about striving in the external and this sort of like linear graph forever, which is like not coincidentally super aligned with like a male orgasm. And as we're coming into this healthier balance of healthy masculine and healthy feminine energies in humans of all genders, and therefore in the things that we create and engage with, we're going to start seeing a spiral course of progress. So it's like merging the cycles that are more feminine, and then at the same time, this like propulsive linear growth. So spiral course of progress, which is, I didn't know this until a few years ago, but that's the way the planets move through the solar system. It's not that they're simply orbiting each other. They're also like shooting through space at, insane speeds. That's what I think we need to align with as human beings to sort of get back on track and move into the next stage of evolution. Relating to like the way this energy is blocking us, for me at least, I'm a triple Aries sun, moon, and rising, and I'm just like an astrological hobbyist. Like, there's so many people on YouTube that know more about astrology than I do that you could listen to. But I do understand that, I've been, this Pluto has been squaring my shit for what, 16 years now, more or less. And Capricorn is my 10th house of career and money. And I've certainly seen huge effects in those areas. And for me, at least, it was interesting to see, like, I became a professional stock trader in 2008 as Pluto was entering Capricorn. And then that whole system was like collapsing, right? And that moved me into other areas. And eventually I realized that because of the introduction of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency tools, we had the technology now, the decentralized technology, to rebuild new economic systems that address the dysfunction that I personally experienced as like a Wall Street trader. A lot of that was misogyny, but that's an extension, like misogyny is pointed at female people, but it's an extension of this energy that I've started using this word misofem that I made up to describe the denigration and like hatred toward feminine energy that can show up again in humans of all genders, so that it isn't just tethered to like identity or biology. It's something that affects all of us. But again, whenever I say that, I always want to stress that, because I feel like women are getting lost in the conversation about like groups of people who have been treated shitty for long periods of time. And so I really want to make sure to fully honor women, specifically when I'm talking about feminine energy, whenever we're going through these transitions and looking to heal this dysfunction, that's impacted all of us. So, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that in terms of the block, so I've been feeling that square, like Pluto and Capricorn squaring my Aries shit. And then, yeah, career stuff took me from the stock market to realizing eventually that decentralized technology could allow us to transcend a lot of the dysfunction in the old system, the economic system specifically, because I came to realize that a big flaw in the old system is that it completely compartmentalizes giving and building abundance yourself, right? That's why we have to have nonprofits, first of all. But then that's also why, like the people who do the best at capitalism, so like the Jeff Bezoses of the world, the people of that demographic who are like quote unquote I shouldn't say like least shitty, but like where are the, I guess, Koslas. I think he's a billionaire and he's trying to do good stuff. And Oprah is an exception as well. Are there white male billionaires that are doing good? Oh, Bill Gates is. But the idea there, okay, so we'll say that Gates, like Bill Gates is the quote unquote best example of success in that system, in the capitalistic system. But then at the same time, he came through with this ethos where it's just like make a fuck ton of money through capitalistic means. At this stage of the game, like technology is a way to do that. Starting a technology company is perhaps the fastest way to do that. Cryptocurrency can get you there pretty quick though, too. He made a fuck ton of money first in the capitalistic channels. And then whatever he hit his 50s or something, then it was like, okay, I'm going to start this foundation and start using this money to make the world a better place. I guess Warren Buffett is trying to do stuff like that too. So it becomes this like, there's this shift, like late career, where these men decide like, oh, now that I've made all this money in the traditional means, which they're not questioning, I'm not finding any of them sort of questioning that structure, then it's like, okay, then I'll start to give it away. That's the best case scenario that we get from like a handful of individuals who like are the best at capitalism. There just isn't questioning of the lack of integration of those two things. So I realized after a lot of reflection and sort of like experience of the dysfunction in the old system that we shouldn't be divorcing those two things, building abundance yourself and helping others. They should be happening concurrently, and we should have a system that supports that. So I ended up founding Seeds, which is our social good mutual aid cryptocurrency project, which helps people build abundance through giving, build wealth through giving. Anyway, so like I said, Pluto's been squaring my shit in Aries for fucking 16 years, right? And Seeds was officially founded, like officially incorporated 11 years ago now. And there've been a lot of ups and downs, and it's been really hard actually, like when I think back on a lot of the stuff I've had to navigate and figure out and whatever. Never having very much money because of discrimination against women in venture capital, which invests in tech. Less than 2% of funding goes to women. Over 98% goes to men. They don't even have stats for other genders that I'm with. So Pluto has been squaring all of my efforts and Seed's efforts by extension during this period of time. And like it's really kicking up again now, but it's more personally targeted. Like it's not coming at Seed so much. But yeah, just today, like bureaucratic nonsense. Like it shows up in such a boring, mundane way for me, mostly, but it's also contentious because like I'm in this like legal fight with this shitty centralized cryptocurrency exchange that ripped me off 4.5 years ago. And I've been fighting them, and I just had like a preliminary hearing with them this morning. And so far so good. But it's just like I think this last pass through Pluto, sorry, through Capricorn, Pluto through Capricorn, for me at least, is trying to teach me not to be so fucking furious about all of that shit. It's just like every bureaucratic fucking abuse of power that exists, like relating to the fall of Atlantis. Whoa, that's like a whole other turn. Maybe I should say this first. So, okay, the mundane, boring experience that I'm having of this, like right now, is this attack from shitty corporations and shitty governments. And it's that toxic masculine energy, like expressed through these shitty systems. And I know that that's the energy that's falling away as we're coming out of this Pluto and Capricorn energy. That's the energy that can no longer survive because it's so low vibration. It makes all of us miserable. And a lot of people think they have to participate in it to get money, basically, right? Because the system is so fucking like drowning in that energy. So that's expressing this boring, mundane way, but it also makes me furious because it is about abuse of power. And I have this thing about like feeling that I need to stand up to it. I used to have this stronger thing about protecting other people from it. That was this narrative in my head. And I'm now confident that that was connected to this life that I had at the fall of Atlantis. I've mostly released that. I've healed that, the underlying thing that led to that, though. The reason that would happen, and I have a whole video about like my memory from the fall of Atlantis, from that Atlantis life, and people I met in this life who also remembered that life, which was trippy as hell. But at the fall of Atlantis, just to recap it in brief, my memory, like I didn't even understand this when I first had this whatever memory come in. I was doing more of vipassana meditation, and I found that, and more anapana, which like leads up to vipassana, prepares you to be suitable for being able to actually do vipassana. And samadhi is about concentration. And I ended up reading in one of the Satipatthana Sutta that that's actually when you're doing a lot of anapana, apparently, I mean, you're moving through the jhanas, which isn't necessary. And I don't mean to get too technical here, but it isn't like necessary for reaching liberation, according to what the Buddha taught, I guess. But you do get benefit when you move through them. And one of the benefits I saw there is that your past life recall starts to improve. And when I read that, it totally aligned with what I started to see happening more so in my life. Like I didn't need to be put into trance or something like that, but also the energies are thinner now. They're slightly less dense than they were like when Dolores Cannon was first doing stuff like this in like the 50s or whatever. It's more accessible for more of us, I think, especially if I'm working with someone who's really skilled. I've only had the benefit of doing that with one person that I found who was super talented, this woman, Taya Anderson, in the UK. When that sort of energetic support is there, I'm able to see a lot, like way more than I thought I could. And I probably looked at, I think, like over 3 dozen-ish past lives. I'm sure I've had many, many more. Okay, so when this memory of Atlantis first was coming up, I didn't understand it. I didn't think to connect it with Atlantis. I had like, like a vague understanding that Atlantis was like a fable or something. I wasn't even aware of that Disney film from like 2001 until after this memory came in, which was kind of interesting because I mean, I guess I turned 17 in 2001, so I was kind of old for like cartoons, but it seemed like my family knew about every Disney movie. And I had like younger siblings, so it seemed kind of weird that I had no awareness of this film. But I didn't identify it with Atlantis or understand it. But the way the memory came in was like I was there. It was so harmonious and happy and wonderful. We didn't have masculine and feminine energies even in the way that they're understood now, let alone genders. But I was sort of more aligned with whatever the precursor to feminine energy was. And I had like a more masculine aligned partner, like romantic partner. And these people came to us who were like us, but they weren't like us. They were from somewhere else and they wanted us to teach them, but they couldn't connect telepathically like we could with one another. So I was appointed like a spokesperson for my people to like help these people that approached us and teach them and stuff. And that was the first mistake because it disconnected our telepathy. We just were totally blindsided. We couldn't conceive of anyone trying to do what these people that came to us eventually did. And that's part of the lesson that we're moving through now with this integration of this shitty energy for fucking 13,000 years or whatever it's been. So they came to us. I was the spokesperson. Because I was the spokesperson, I was aware that actually they had malicious intentions. And I knew that before the rest of my people because I'd like disconnected from our telepathic whatever connection to try and help these people that came to us. And so I tried to stop them. Even thinking about this, there's still emotion there. By this is the part that I totally didn't understand at all whenever this memory first came in. By dissolving myself, dissolving my energy to try and put it into them to shift them enough so that they wouldn't do this. And I do have this memory of like, it sounds crazy, I know, of like rising into the air and looking down, and I could see my partner in that life. And I feel certain that that whatever being, Buddhist cosmology doesn't believe in souls per se, as like other like Hinduism does or something, but that being from that life, my like masculine counterpart in that life, is alive now, and I think I know who it is. I think it's a semi-famous person who I've never met, who is a filmmaker who has a film coming out at TIFF, and I'm going to go to TIFF to see it. The Toronto International Film Festival, which starts in like a week and a half. Anyway, so I wasn't actually there for the fall because I did that and it didn't work. And I think I got like a lot of good karma for it because it was a sacrifice, but it didn't work. And anyway, the reason I started talking about this was because that failure, like I felt so guilty about that failure that I think in coming into this life and the banal, fucking boring ass bureaucratic version of lower level dense shit that we have of this now. Like, so I think after the fall, those attackers, they sucked out, there's like a whirlpool, almost like a portal, but it was connected to the water that we were in, that pulled our energy into a different dimension where they took it. I think some of us left, some of us got away before everything collapsed and integrated in other parts of the world, and tried to like move evolution along a little bit more quickly. But it meant that humanity just like, was set back in these huge seeming ways. But actually, it was a part of this progression in which that energy had to be integrated within us so that we would become sophisticated enough that we couldn't be blindsided by something like that happening again. And I think a lot of us who were alive then are alive now for what's happening now, particularly heading into fucking like Pluto getting out of Capricorn, going into 2025 and 2026. And I think that seeds is an important part of this because like I said earlier, I think getting us out of the economic system is key to, first of all, giving people the space that they need to heal and be out of survival mode enough and out of like striving and status and all that shit, like enough to really start to remember. And COVID was a taste of that. And, like there's a conversation about it, COVID causing like a mental health crisis and stuff. But what I see there is that it just allowed people to stop using the striving and the survival to an extent. Some people didn't have the luxury of doing this, to like distract them from the shit that they needed to heal. And as that was surfacing during COVID, people didn't know how to deal with it. So we need, to share more about tools like Vipassana that has helped me immeasurably. I'm certain it's the most wonderful thing that humans can do to help with healing and releasing the things that cause us pain. So, yeah, Atlantis kicked this off. And now we're stuck with like fucking evil corporations like wasting our money and our time to try and exploit us. Or at least I am in this current version of the energy that I'm dealing with now, which is so boring to talk about. But like, I get so angry about it because I can feel how, uh, I mean, it's the worst of toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity. There's narcissism in it. There's just like a gaslighting. There's just an exploitative, horrible, dehumanizing energy in it. And we're expected to tolerate it because it's the way that things have been for a long time. And I don't want to tolerate it anymore, and I'm fighting it. And when I fight it, it takes like I'm not somebody that like thrives on conflict or something. I think I came into this life with this much Aries energy to help me with that, because I was too collapsed in other lives, like in the life preceding this one, which was during the Holocaust, I just couldn't fucking deal, particularly after my father in that life was killed by Nazis. And I think he was the same soul that was with me in that Atlantis life. So I think in this life, I've said this before in other videos, but I had a lot of Aries to help me be an individual and independent and able to like fight and stuff. So I can fucking do it. And I seem to, sooner or later, I do seem to prevail whenever I fight those energies and corporations and governments and other shitty systems that are imbued with it. But it does take a lot out of me. And I am mostly alone. It's been interesting to see how much more isolated I've gotten in like the last few years, not through my own design so much, because it felt like to help me be acquainted with this energy, I grew up in a narcissistic family of origin and I was the scapegoat kid. And then I dated narcissists because that was familiar, and then eventually healed enough to set boundaries around it. And then people who had narcissism in them that I couldn't even see because I was subtler. When I set boundaries with them, they left my life too. And so it's like been this period of a few years now, or even more than a few, 4-ish years, where I was setting those boundaries thinking that like my tribe or something was going to come in once I set these boundaries, but it hasn't happened yet. And I think it's connected to making films. I think there's a film I want to make, and I think I need to take more steps toward bringing that to life in order to connect with my actual tribe and stuff. And I think that partner, that soul that I think was in these previous lives, is part of that too. He wants to support that feminine energy and is more equipped to do that in ways that I'm not. And I have all this conviction and sort of like confidence about what I think is happening and what I'm seeing. And the mailman just came and my dog didn't bark at him. That's interesting. The energy does feel higher in here. He almost always does, though. I can't think of another time that he didn't where he heard the sound. That makes me feel better. The energy in here does feel better now. It's a higher vibration. Yeah. So anyway, I think that's on the other side of this, but we still together we have to get through fucking like November 19th, right? So what am I trying to say? I'm just trying to contextualize this, I guess, in a larger narrative. I feel better already having said this. Um, it is lower level stuff, right? It's this sort of last opportunity for us to revisit these sort of painful areas that Pluto has unearthed in whatever Capricorn is for us, whatever that house is for us, and to like look at it again and look at how we're responding and reflect on if we've learned anything. Hopefully, we have learned a lot, and to be mindful of cementing that lesson within ourselves. So, again, like for me, I think it's being equanimous about that shit, understanding that it's all impermanent, like truly deeply understanding that in my mind body apparatus, and therefore not getting so furious about it. And also, so fucking, I just go through kind of a range of emotions whenever I run into it and feel it stifling me. And there's often a lot of ignorance in it, it's just a lower vibration. So it'll come through people who don't even understand anything remotely about how what they're doing or saying is damaging. Like, for example, another battle, really, it is kind of a battle that I'm in with an institution imbued with that energy, is like in the little town where I bought some land and built a tiny house in Massachusetts last year. I made a video about it if you feel like watching it. And the town gave me a lot of trouble about the tiny house for one thing, and led me to believe if I did certain things it would be fine to be there. And then they reneged on that. I haven't tried to fight them on that yet. I went across the country for the winter instead, and I'm in Portland, Oregon right now. But they're doing a thing where they're like overcharging taxes, and there are issues with that. And it's a small amount of money, but it's like the principle of it. I'm just like, no, you can't fucking do this. And I can feel how like it's a small town, but like, and I grew up in a town less than half the size of this town. And I don't expect, like everyone in the world who works in government to be like super sophisticated or whatever. But you can't like be a narcissist, and you can't fucking gaslight a taxpayer who's just like, hey, there were these issues. Why does my bill say this? You can't just like ignore. They didn't even respond to the last email I sent, like asking them to explain certain discrepancies in the tax bill. I bring this up though because I can feel like it's ignorance. It's mostly ignorance. The tax collector herself like thinks of herself as a nice person. There's identity stuff in there, and it's different expressions of the toxic masculine. The town administrator is also a woman who I dealt with in when talking about tiny house stuff. I dealt with her separately, and she was like compassionate and whatever, but then she like immediately deferred to this dude who's like the head of the select board in the town, because that's what New England towns have, select boards or something. It's like the women are showing this expression of toxic masculinity at my detriment, and so is the dude who's like more oblivious and more aggressive. So whatever, it's just like I understand that, and I can have compassion for that to an extent. When I'm more evolved, I'll have it fully, not just like to an extent. But at the same time, those boundaries have to be set and they have to wake up, and it's not doing anyone any favors if we're like allowing ignorance to permeate at the expense of those in who are not in positions of power. Because I mean, this is like it's a small town, whatever, but they're in a relative position of power over me and they're abusing it. So I'm like fighting against that and whatever, even though it's about this small amount of money. I'm just like fucking, it's like I can't resist. I can't not do that. And so it goes. So anyway, as I said, started talking about all that, I felt myself going back into the smaller, tighter, lower energy. And that's how that like that's how technology feels to me, because it is also imbued with this energy. And I've talked about this elsewhere too, but I think that goes back to Leibniz, the mathematician who, when coming up with the idea for binary code, which all computing systems rest upon today, even quantum computing systems, he was reading the I Ching and he was trying to figure out a way to express written logic problems numerically, as I understand. And he didn't know how to do it. And then reading the I Ching and the concept of yin and yang, masculine and feminine energy, gave him the idea to use ones and zeros. And then that became the predecessor to binary code. It was a mistake. He shouldn't have translated masculine and feminine into all or nothing. That's not the proper translation. It's reductive beyond belief. It's extremely reductive. So that's baked into our tech. So I think in the future, that's going to have to change too. We're going to have computing systems of the future. I had this vision come in once when I was meditating like 6 years ago. The computing systems of the future, instead of resting on concrete ones or zeros, or quantum computing systems as I understand, like move in a range between 0 and 1, but there's still that limitation. In the future, the foundation of computing systems is going to have to behave like matter, able to be a particle and a wave simultaneously. And I think we'll move through it with consciousness. And I think that vipassana meditation is going to be key to understanding how to do that. The Buddha had a lot of powers. If you read the text, I mean, people that developed got a lot of powers. And I mean, I've even seen in my own small way, I mean, I have a long way to go in terms of my development, but I mean, I can even, with the amount of experience I have with Vipassana, I can like turn off pain. Not completely, but if I stub my toe or hit my elbow on something, I can turn down the mental component of that pain from like 100% to like 30% or something, and make it like way more tolerable. And I mentioned like how the ability to look at past lives and stuff has developed more so, and psychic stuff has developed in kind of funny ways that sometimes showed itself at courses. Like the first instance that pops into my head is being told the name of a stranger at a meditation course, and then like later that was that person. And I think I was told that because I ended up riding back to San Francisco, was the nearest city I was going back to after that course. I rode with that person, and I think I was directed to him because he was a recovering alcoholic, and I never called myself an alcoholic, although other people certainly did. And maybe that's my ego resisting that title a little bit, that label. But I certainly for fucking sure had a bad binge drinking problem for like 14 years. And Vipassana eventually allowed me to release that. And I've been totally sober for over 6 years now, like everything. Anyway, yeah, I think that that's why that message came in to tell me that. And I would get other impressions in different ways, sometimes visually. It's a direct effect of developing in vipassana practice. So, to bring it all back, if you're feeling these blocks, if you're feeling that frustration, I hope to provide like empathy. I really feel you in that struggle, but we're almost out of it. We're so close to being out of it. And we can look at this kind of button here over the next nearly 3 months, not quite, starting September 1st when Pluto has regressed into Capricorn to November 19th. It can be like almost like we can look at it like the icing on the cake or something. It's a last sort of gift to help us truly be reminded of how much we've learned these lessons, of how far we've come, and of how we can kind of face those same problems with more equanimity, look at them in different ways, um, understanding, on a deeper level than ever before that they are impermanent. All of this is impermanent. So when we become upset about it, angry, whenever I get furious at like people exploiting other people, I can still stand up against the lower vibratory elements of that energy. I can still set healthy boundaries around it. I can like skip the part where I'm furious. You know what I'm saying? And we can all do whatever, like our version of that is. And soon we're going to be a lot more free. And that's going to be really fun. It's going to be so much better. It's going to be so much more creative, more feminine, more wild. We'll be more cared for. We'll be healthier physically, like healthier in all ways. It's just going to be so much better. And I'm so excited. And yeah, I hope you're feeling excited too when you think of it that way. Yeah. So I'll let you go. If you're interested in actively engaging with systems that are working to transcend the old economic system, check out Seeds. If you help someone in need through Seeds, we'll send you Seeds cryptocurrency and thanks, because it's designed to allow giving people to build wealth because you helped. That's a key way in which it's meant to transcend the limitations and the dysfunction in the old economic system. And the link's in the description. Okay, thank you for listening. I'll talk to you later. Bye.